Burkina Faso is on the verge of a historic breakthrough. For decades, the CFA Franc has been a symbol of French economic control over Francophone Africa, keeping nations financially dependent. But what if that were about to change? Burkina Faso has just taken a bold step that could shake the foundations of French economic control in Africa. After decades of financial dominance through the CFA Franc, the West African nation is breaking free with its own currency, Sira. This move threatens to dismantle France's grip on the region's economy, and Paris is scrambling to respond. Could this be the beginning of a financial revolution in Africa? Will other nations follow Burkina Faso's lead? Stay tuned as we uncover the shocking details of this historic shift and why France is so afraid of Sira. Could this be the beginning of true economic liberation for West Africa? President Traore is taking bold steps to end French imperialist hegemony, and the new currency, Sira, might be the key to full monetary independence. But will it succeed? Can it truly replace the CFA Franc? Stay tuned as we dive deep into this game-changing development and uncover what it means for the future of Burkina Faso and the entire region. The president of Burkina Faso made a very remarkable statement in an interview in February 2024, demonstrating his determination to change the country. "Maybe everything we've done has surprised you, hasn't it?" he asked. "There will be more adjustments that may still surprise you, so don't worry. We will sever all the bonds that have held us captive." What a famous quote. Traore's declaration demonstrates that everything he has done since taking office in Burkina Faso was prearranged and not impulsive. His remarks are a direct challenge to those who claim that because he is a member of the military, he lacks experience and is incapable of leading a nation. Everything they have done has undoubtedly shocked the globe, particularly the West, as the captain stated. With the introduction of a new currency, they are now poised to take the West by surprise, particularly France. The goal, according to Captain Traore, is to sever all connections that have kept the nation in slavery. And we can all agree that Burkina Faso and 14 other African countries currently utilize the CFA Franc as their currency, which has kept these countries in servitude. Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos like this one. Let's proceed. However, Traore and the leaders of Niger and Mali are currently paving a new course that will release them from the limitations placed on them by outside forces. Given this, Traore is making important progress in creating Sira, the new Burkinabe currency. The creation of the Burkinabe Treasury Deposit Bank was one such move taken in the direction of the currency's formation. You know, Francophone African nations lack central banks, in contrast to other African nations that have them to control the nation's monetary system. There is the Central Bank of West African states, which functions as a branch of the French bank. Francophone Africa was therefore unable to print or issue money. They were required to retain half of their money reserves in France, and were unable to regulate monetary policy without French consent. Money is a symbol of sovereignty, as General Tieni famously stated, and we are working to regain complete sovereignty. The issue of our states serving as France's cash cow has been resolved. In order to hold its reserves and control its monetary and financial system, Burkina Faso will no longer need to rely on the Central Bank of West African State, a colonial remnant thanks to Traore's creation of a treasury deposit bank. Burkina Faso will no longer be required to place 50% of its reserves in a French bank thanks to this treasury deposit. Furthermore, with a network that spans regional, provincial, and departmental treasuries, the Treasury Bank is built to offer easily accessible banking services to all individuals, irrespective of their location. That's not all though. Additionally, the Treasury Deposit Bank will serve a broader spectrum of customers, including state corporations, private enterprises, local government agencies, foreign organizations, non-governmental organizations, and public institutions. Its main goal will be to oversee the public treasury's banking operations, which include transaction processing, resource collection, and account administration. The creation of the Treasury Deposit Bank removes any possibility of French intervention by enabling Burkina Faso to carry out financial operations on its own without going via the Central Bank of West African State. As you can see, this endeavor lays the groundwork for the CFA Franc's eventual abolition. Without a doubt, Burkina Faso has entered a new phase of monetary independence, even though the new currency, Sira, is still being developed. Burkina Faso will have complete control over the Sira, in contrast to the CFA Franc, enabling the nation to control inflation, establish its own monetary policies, and support domestic businesses free from outside interference. The Treasury Deposit Bank will protect the nation's financial reserves in order to facilitate this change, doing away with the need to deposit money in banks under French jurisdiction. The Burkina Faso government also intends to use gold to support the currency in addition to the Treasury Deposit Bank. For this reason, President Traore has recently taken important actions to regain control of the nation's gold reserves, which had previously been in the hands of terrorists and foreign corporations. In addition to outlawing the export of gold, he established a refinery for gold mining and a facility for processing garbage. In order to secure its economic future, these gold refining and processing facilities are an important step, allowing the nation to keep more of its wealth domestically and lessen the illegal gold trade that has been used to finance instability and violence. Additionally, the refinery guarantees Burkina Faso's ability to increase its gold reserves, which will eventually be required when it's prepared to introduce its own currency and abandon the CFA franc. According to recent sources, Burkina Faso's authorities also intend to revise the 2015 mining code in July 2023 with a number of changes. The idea to create a national gold reserve is one such innovation. Information from the March 20, 2024 Council of Ministers meeting indicates that Burkina Faso intends to request mining corporations to help develop the country's gold reserve. In an effort to create a more organized and controlled business, the updated mining code also incorporates new rules for the marketing of gold and other minerals. Therefore, in addition to prohibiting the export of gold, businesses, especially those from other countries, are expected to donate gold in order to increase the nation's gold reserves. This is when things start to get interesting. Gold bars are now being produced in Burkina Faso. The fine coal, which was previously abandoned in the Essakane mine, was processed to create the gold bars. The residue left over after gold is extracted that still contains a significant amount of gold is called fine coal. About 44 gold bars, weighing 93.197 kilograms, were produced by the Burkinabe Waste Facility using the fine coal and given to the Economy Ministry. This is excellent. Burkina Faso is, in fact, making great strides. The Sira will therefore be guaranteed by gold produced and kept in Burkina Faso's Treasury Deposit Bank, rather than the CFA franc, which is backed by the euro. Burkina Faso's financial independence is undergoing a significant change at the moment. You see, Burkina Faso is about to accomplish something that no other African nation has been able to do before. The CFA franc, established by General de Gaulle's proclamation on December 26, 1945, has been used by Francophone nations for many years. The need for France to promote economic cohesion among the colonies under its control gave rise to this colonial currency. They consequently have authority over their political, economic, and resource systems. Currently, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo-Brazzaville, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon use this currency, as do Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, and Togo in West Africa. France maintained considerable political and economic sway over Africa by using this currency. Because it was in charge of monetary policy and the currency's convertibility. This implies that France could control the money supply, interest rates, and currency valuation throughout Francophone Africa from Paris with the help of the CFA franc. Furthermore, Francophone Africa's money reserve was under French authority, since the continent was obliged to initially deposit all of its funds with French banks. Eventually, it shifted to 70%, and now it stands at 50%. Francophone Africa was therefore unable to print or issue money. They were required to retain half of their money reserves in France, and were unable to regulate monetary policy without French consent. The usage of CFA franc by supposedly autonomous African nations has been sharply condemned for decades. However, France has defended the euro on numerous occasions, claiming that it was required to advance monetary stability, ease economic integration, and improve overall economic performance. Because the CFA franc is tied to the euro, its proponents also contend that it serves as a helpful inflation hedge. Senegalese economist Ndongo Samba Sila, Chief of Research and Policy for Africa at International Development Economics Associates, claims that the CFA was established for France's defense against the strengthening US dollar, rather than for the benefit of African nations. He continued by explaining why the CFA is not a useful currency or system for its user states from a simply pragmatic economic perspective. Because a long-term review of the GDP of nations that use the CFA franc shows that none of them have had any notable developments since gaining their independence, which would have been expected if the CFA franc had been genuinely beneficial to them. The 1970s saw the highest per capita GDP in any of these countries. Samba went on to say that because the exports of Francophone nations are valued and exchanged in US dollars, the CFA franc's linkage to the euro is even hurting their economies. As a result, their mostly commodity-based products are no longer competitive in the global market. Because it confines Francophone Africa to a neo-colonial model that prioritizes foreign businesses over domestic ones, this system threatens the continent's economic independence. The currency's supporters now highlight its stability and trustworthiness, while pointing out that no member of the CFA has yet faced a significant financial crisis. This may be the case, but the reality is that African nations are paying a hefty price for the currency's purported stability. Consider first that each member of the CFA must deposit at least 50% of its foreign exchange reserves, or around 10 billion euros, into a designated account at the French Treasury. In exchange, France promises that CFA francs can be converted into euros at any time. Does this make sense though? Why would a sovereign nation be required to hold half of its foreign reserves in a foreign bank? It makes no economic sense, and in our opinion, it's just a way for France to exercise control over its former colonies. Using the CFA franc also has the effect of artificially raising the cost of African goods. In contrast to other African nations whose economies can be influenced by their exchange rates, CFA nations are unable to achieve that on their own. As a result of their lack of currency control, they would have to wait on France to discount their currency in order to boost exports. Additionally, their prices are inherently higher because the CFA franc is linked to the strong euro. In addition to making their economy less competitive, this encourages imports from nations with weak currencies, such as China. In turn, the importation of completed goods restricts the industrialization of CFA zone members and increases their reliance on exporting more materials. So, who stands to gain anything from the CFA franc? Proponents of the CFA franc assert that because Francophone Africa uses the currency, the region's inflation rate is lower than that of other parts of Africa. This may be the case, but the economy is sluggish and fewer jobs are being created as a result of the so-called low inflation. This is because currency stability discourages domestic manufacturing while luring in international investors. In other words, the CFA franc is only a good currency for those who stand to gain from it. Specifically, the executives of the zone's central banks, the main French and foreign enterprises, the heads of state unwilling to offend France, and the elites seeking to return cash obtained legitimately or illegally. It's interesting to note that in 1962, a year after gaining independence, Mali attempted to escape this financial and economic enslavement by establishing the Malian franc, its own currency. But because of internal conflicts and France's adamant refusal to grant total independence to any of its former colonies, in 1984, the Malian franc was dropped, and Mali became a part of the CFA zone. No other Francophone nation has made an effort to escape these economic constraints since. Nonetheless, in 2019, President Alassane Ouattara and President Macron of France issued a press release declaring the demise of the CFA in its previous form. They claim that the requirement that the Central Bank of West African states deposit half of its foreign exchange reserves with the French Treasury has been lifted. The ECO will replace the CFA franc as the currency's name, and France will no longer be in charge of its administration. Since the CFA franc hasn't been converted to ECO by 2025, we can also assume that France is still in charge of currency management. That is to say, nothing has altered. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that Burkina Faso has chosen to design its own currency. But Burkina Faso isn't the only one. Additionally, the three Sahelian nations intend to establish a single currency. Remember how Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso signed the Liptako-Gourma Charter in September 2023, forming a new coalition known as the Alliance of the Sahel State, which set the stage for the three nations to form a confederation. It began as a defense agreement that allowed the three nations to combine their armed forces to combat Islamist or rebel organizations. The coalition would eventually transform from a defense union to a real economic, monetary, and political union that opposes the ECOWAS bloc, President Traore subsequently disclosed. The three states' finance ministers jointly released a statement in November of that year, suggesting the formation of an expert group to research the topic of monetary and economic unity. This was a historic attempt to create a common currency known as Sahel in order to restore its monetary sovereignty. As you can see, there is merit to the idea of establishing a single currency. Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali are all quite serious about it. Everyone is currently anxiously awaiting the next action in relation to the introduction of a new currency. Because producing new banknotes is only one aspect of creating fresh cash. A stronger financial system would have to take the place of ones that have been in existence for decades. Tieno Thion, a specialist in West African monetary policy and unions, asserts that a number of crucial elements must be taken into account in order to properly introduce and sustain a multilateral currency. First, thorough coordination of budgetary and macroeconomic policy is required. Therefore, in order to guarantee currency value stability and eradicate trade imbalances, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali will need to closely coordinate their budgetary and economic policies. By doing this, regional growth will be promoted and the confidence of economic actors will be maintained. Second, it is necessary to establish robust monetary management organizations that will oversee currency management, such as a shared central bank. In order to maintain the value of the currency and control cyclical volatility, this central bank needs to have the power to implement an autonomous and stable monetary policy. Third, a single market must be established among the three nations. This is a really important move. The free movement of capital, labor, goods, and services will be guaranteed by the single market, fostering regional collaboration and accelerating economic growth. In this regard, the West African Economic and Monetary Union's existing framework provides a significant advantage. Lastly, crisis monitoring and resolution systems must be put in place. For instance, currency swap agreements and common reserve funds could help lessen both internal and external shocks to the new currency. Exchange rate risks can be managed and cross-border financing made possible by currency swaps, which entail two parties exchanging amounts in two different currencies for a predetermined period of time at a predetermined rate. We can't help but admire their initiative in choosing to create a new currency. As several analysts have noted, there may be risks associated, but overall, the advantages greatly exceed the risks. First, these nations would gain full independence if a new currency were created. Second, better resource allocation and increased trade integration will result from the creation of a wider monetary zone. Additionally, it would increase the nation's adaptability while interacting with outside partners. Thirdly, these three nations may gain a lot by establishing a new monetary union, including improved trade integration, independence from outside partners, reduced transaction costs, and higher investor appeal. Ibrahim Traore and his colleague made a daring action, and Africa as a whole applauds it. What do you think about the new currency from Ibrahim Traore? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.